Hey Thornton, Jim here. Wanted to give an update on the Billtrum 521, or the North American version, I guess we could call it. I've improved the layout here. I labeled player 1 and player 2 just for terminology, but I also changed this to orange. I think the orange and red is a little more visible. Um, I wanted to explain an improvement I've made and the reasoning behind it. Basically, I'm still thinking it could be called Billtrum 521, except it's 521 instead of 521. So the order of the holes is a little different. Now, what I've found is that the center pocket is it's a lot harder to make balls in the center pocket. I think that's kind of a well-known thing. But anyhow, the way this game plays, if you recall from my previous video, I kind of like the idea of having alternating shots on this first stage of the game. In other words, there's no runouts possible in this game. So the first stage will be alternating shots, and what I really like is the idea that the second and third stage, or I should say second and third stage, it will be possible to run out. So when you make the fifth ball here, you could run out on the other holes. So you could make the fifth ball, then you could make these two balls and the winning shot in the side pocket. So I've changed the winning shot to the side pocket. What I found on the previous version, two balls in the side pocket and a winner in the corner, it's it I like the flow of it better, but the playability is much more difficult. It turns out setting up two balls on the side pocket and a winner over here, it's I found it a little too hard to run out that way. And I think see, the idea I have is that part of playing the game will be setting up for this final run out, or the final three balls will be set up prior to making the fifth ball, and therefore running out and winning the game. So I'm finding that the two balls on the center hole is too difficult to set up, number one, and it's maybe too difficult even to perform. So I'm moving the second stage to this corner pocket. I think it's quite a bit easier to make these two balls in the corner and then have the winner on this final ball. So, for example, the player would want to maybe set up this ball somewhere around here so that they can get that final shot on it. Um, so that's one change I'm making, and I have played quite a few games of it, and I think it is an improvement over the playability. I'll make a few games with playing in this style, um, but I do think it's a better gameplay. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is that this idea of doing alternating shots on the first stage, I'm not insisting on that. It might be sort of an optional thing. You could play that way, or you could play just where you could uh, you could continue your shots on the five. So I'm not really dead set on that one way or the other. I think that could be an optional thing. I do like the idea of the alternating shots, and I think it's maybe just a personal thing. I like that. I like the way the game would transition from alternating shots into a run out for a win. I think that's pretty cool, and it might help prevent blowouts, I think. So that's one thing. Another thing I wanted to address, and I think you mentioned it. This sort of, I guess you call it a smash break. It's very it's almost ingrained, I think, in the American mentality to break in this manner. Now, so I don't really see people not doing that, at least in the U.S. But one thing I wanted to point out is that I'm designing this American version for what what we consider a barroom pool table. In other words, it's a coin operated thing where you put your dollar in and you get a set of balls. So in other words, on a bar table, there's no possibility to return a ball from a pocket back to the table, which of course you can do in a snooker table. Now, I know you mentioned you had a table at home, and I would imagine that you could return the balls on that table, and it's not like a coin operated thing where you have to pay or whatever. So what that means as far as the rule set, which maybe I'll get around to writing someday, but what it basically means is that, and I have thought about this, but whenever a player pockets the ball in the wrong hole or in the wrong order, that ball has to count for the opponent. So, for example, if this player, which I've called player two, has let's say 2 points here, and the other player pockets a ball improperly, then this player score is going to go from 2 to 3. So this player will get credit for that ball as if it were pocketed for them in whatever hole they're working on. So as the game progresses, every ball that gets pocketed will count to one player or the other, and that way it, there is the game doesn't get ruined by accidentally pocketing a ball in a hole out of order. So it will always it'll be you either pocket the balls correctly or that ball gets credited to the opponent. Will basically be how the rule works. Now, I have played a game in which I smash break and I scored two balls on the break, and so that obviously that those two balls go to the breaker. But in my alternating scenario, the player after the break is always going to be the other player because there's no continuation the way I'm playing. So if, for example, one ball went in this pocket, the other ball went in this pocket, then that player would get to choose what pocket they're on, and they would get 2 points. So the score would be, for example, off after the break 0 to 2, and they would continue with their alternating shots until somebody gets 5, and then they continue. So I really do have the vision of this gameplay that I'm describing. I really do have the vision that the players will it will be desirable to set up balls for the second and third stage prior to hitting that fifth ball on the first stage, because you really do want to be able to run out and win the game right after you make the fifth ball. Um, so, for example, making the fifth ball first doesn't really guarantee that you're going to win unless, um, or most likely win, unless you have set up two balls for this pocket and maybe one for this pocket. So, if you make the fifth ball and you proceed with nothing prepared, your opponent's definitely going to get um, other chances to shoot on your sort of so-called setup shots, as you assuming you do want to set up. So yeah, that's the idea I have for this follow-up video. I'm going to call this one Billtrum Research Part B, I guess. That would be a Part A and Part B, and maybe if I need to add more in the future. But I do want to continue making sample gameplays just to document how the game is progressing, at least the design of the game. I mean, all right. So I think that's all I wanted to discuss in this video. So yeah, thanks. Talk to you later.